Thank you, Aisha. Welcome to India, Mr. Pereira.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure being in India because I follow more than 60 countries around the world, and I can honestly say that I don't see the vibrancy, the entrepreneurship, and the innovation and the future in many countries like I see in India. So it's always a pleasure being here.
Interesting. So I'm going to talk more about India in that case. Let's begin with a quick rapid fire. I'll give you 3 questions. You have to answer them in just one word. Okay? In one word, how will you like to describe the state of the Indian economy?
Good.
How will you like to describe the state of global economy in one word?
Uncertain.
Okay. And what about the state of economic divide across the world?
Worry. I think worrisome.
Interesting. We'll go to the bit about economic divide in just a bit, but first talking about India, you've called it good. What makes Indian economic outlook, the prospects, more resilient as compared to other emerging economies?
Well, I honestly think that the future of the world is India. I have no doubt about that. I think India is a rising economic power, but also a major power of the world. In the next 2 or 3 decades, I believe that as long as India continues to reform, as long as India continues to invest in education and infrastructure, I sincerely think that the next big major power is going to be India. Not only because of the population, but also because of the vibrancy, the innovation, the entrepreneurship that I see in this country. So I think that it's quite important to think, if you see the trajectory of India in the past few decades, India for a while was a sleeping giant, restrained by too many licensing, I think Amitabh Khan called it license trash, and too many restrictions. But then afterwards, a process of reform that took place over the last 10 years, it accelerated in the past 10 years, has led to significant unleashing of the economic forces that I think will characterize for the next few years. And so as long as India continues to reform, I sincerely think that not only a very strong rate of growth will ensue, but also millions of people will go out of poverty and will come into strengthening the middle class. And India, in many areas of the world, will be a leading innovative country. So I'm very hopeful about India. I say this all around the world. I'm not saying this because I'm in India. I say this because I truly believe that we are witnessing the rise of a major power of the world, and that will shape the world in the next few decades.
So what role do you see India playing as far as this changing global order is concerned, and given the kind of economic divide that we are witnessing, which is a cause of big concern? India has often spoken about the importance of the global south, but given how the global situation is right now, there is increasing protectionism. We have Trump back in the White House. He has already declared a reciprocal tariff policy. So, and there are geopolitical tensions that continue as well. So amidst all of this, what role do you see India playing to, perhaps make an effort to narrow this economic divide that exists?
Well, as I said, internally, I think India needs to continue to reform, invest in education, invest in infrastructure, continue to, invest and continue to be the innovative entrepreneurial hub that is right now. I think at the global level, India, one thing that we know that will be quite important for India going forward is that the World Trade System functions, and we continue to trade with each other. Remember, more than 1 billion people got out of poverty around the world in the past few decades because we had a functioning world system. It's because of trade. More trade usually leads to more growth, more job creation, and as a consequence, almost everybody benefits. But we know that, trade, there are some corrections that need to be done, but we know that, world trade is a very important source of growth. So we need to make sure that multilateral dialogue goes forward, and we are able to continue to protect world trade, and we continue to protect our companies compete with each other in the global scene. So what role can India play? I think what what we saw Prime Minister Modi at the White House a couple of days ago, exactly trying to get a deal with the American administration, trying to promote trade across both nations. This is something that, this is the role I think that India should try to promote. More trade, and how can we, if there are problems with the world trade system, how can we correct them? And how can we make sure that we have a level playing field for everybody at the same time that we are able to protect our trading system? I think that's the role that India should play. So both internally and externally, I think that should be a top priority.
Okay, but do you see some kind of structural, perhaps, barriers that are preventing countries, especially in the global south, from closing this income and development gap that need attention right now?
Well, certainly there are several challenges and a lot of barriers for the global south or developing countries that are not able to close the barriers. So first, it's important to realize that in the last 40, 50 years, we have never seen development like we've seen around the world. And this is because many countries around the world, reformed, they were able to invest in education, and also the trade system was quite important. But many countries stayed behind, and the reason is why. The question is why. Well, one of the big reasons that we have countries falling behind is, first, internal reasons, bad policies. Many countries insisted of having either an import substitution strategy too restrictive, or, for example, I used to teach macroeconomics, and my first class with my students, I used to say, if you tell me to engineer a growth miracle in a country, I might know the preconditions, but I don't know exactly. Nobody knows the exact the conditions to do it. But if you want me to destroy a country, it's very simple. You just print money like crazy. You go on a rampant, promote your cronies, and do not promote trade. If you do this, you'll have a lot of inflation, erratic economic policy, and so it's not difficult to kill growth. Over the years, we had many countries that have done that. So bad policies very often is the first barrier for you not to develop. But other barriers that are quite important, usually bad institutions, not having central bank independence, not having regulators that are able to promote competition, or having a system that does not promote a culture of integrity, or foments corruption. This is something that is quite important. Or have other institutional barriers that don't promote good, strong institutions. Then another barrier for development for many of these countries is education. If you had countries like Korea, then China, Japan, in Asia, but also in Latin America or Africa, the countries that developed the most, or the countries that first and foremost, they promoted the education of their people. If you want really, the first priority in any country should be education, 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 so that you're able to have better skills, so that firms are able to also compete in the national and the world markets. So education is another area that is quite important. So institutions, education, good economic policies, macroeconomic stability, and obviously infrastructure. One of the reasons, you were just talking at the previous panel, one of the reasons India is doing well is also because with growth, you're also investing a lot in infrastructure. And infrastructure is absolutely essential to cut the cost of businesses and to prosper growth and to foment growth. So this is another area that I think is quite important. And then finally, a sound or a good and financial market. That's why financial markets play a very important role for firms to scale up and to be able to do more trade. So having a good financial market also is quite important, not only for stability, but also for growth.
Are we on the right track?
In India.
Across the world to bridge this economic divide? I
think India is definitely on the right track. Continue to reform. Maintain a reform attitude that is quite important. Maintain this insatisfaction, not be always happy all the time. Just say we need to get better, we need to improve, we need to get in all our sectors, become leaders. And so India needs to continue the reform attitude. So I like what I see. Continue. Just be always unsatisfied. Just say we need to progress even further. We want to become the leaders. So I think that's important. For the world, we see positive signs and not so positive signs. First, there is a significant, I think this has started in the past few years, a significant productivity divide between certainly in some of the major economic areas of the world. You see very strong productivity growth in the United States right now, 2.7% in the last 2 years. This was mostly because of 2 or 3 reasons. First, in the pandemic, there were 22 million jobs that were lost in the United States, and many of those jobs, people that lost the jobs went to create their own firms, or they went to larger firms, so higher...